Welcome back to the Jon and Lebo show. Almost at the Boston Beat right there. Alex Lebowitz here with John Sokoloff back for another episode. And we were going to talk about some other stuff, mainly the NBA playoffs today, but we woke up with some news on Aaron Hernandez apparently committing suicide early this morning in his jail cell. This is like a week after him being found not guilty of double homicide. And for me, John, as someone who grew up a Pats fan, this is crazy because it kind of brings back everything that he had, and it brings back this whole story really from the forefront. You're forced to reflect. So I look back to 2012 when he signed a 5-year, $40 million contract. You know, he was one of the best young tight ends in the NFL, had a promising career, and he just threw it all away because it wasn't even that he was in the wrong crowd. He was the wrong crowd. He was the bad influence. He was just a guy who made bad decisions and just, I honestly think, genuinely was not a great person. Whether it was because of the drug use, his father passing when he was in high school had a huge impact on him. But this guy got off of murder, and I, obviously he's found not guilty. You have to respect the court's decision. But essentially, they didn't have a lot of evidence in the first place, and one of the key witnesses was Odin Lloyd, the person he murdered in the first place. So this whole story kind of brings back a lot of memories from the past 5 years on how this whole thing's gone about. And I don't think we'll ever see another story like this again, really.
Well, I feel like with sports, you're always surprised. Like there's always something that happens that one-ups like the last thing. That just happens. Like as time goes on, it happens. We didn't think anyone would beat Chris Johnson's 40 time. We didn't think, just that we could have a great year of sports like we did last year. But, we did. And the 28-3, all that stuff. Basically, we were always surprised. So I'm not ever ultimately surprised anymore in sports, or at least it takes a lot more for me to. But this one really shocked me, Alex. I thought it definitely, him committing suicide, I feel, definitely had something to do with the verdict of the double murder. Because obviously it happened right after it. I'm just trying to think, I'm just so fascinated as to what went on, what went through.
Well, the one thing that stuck out to me last week when they read the verdict and he was found not guilty, it's the first time I've seen him show emotion in the 5 years since he was originally, or 4 years since he was originally charged for the murder of Odin Lloyd. So, it could have been a case of him being like, I really messed up. Like, this is bad. I'm not guilty for these murders. And the reality is, like, he completely botched what he did with Odin Lloyd. Like, if we're talking like just the guy murdered Odin Lloyd 2 miles away from his home in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. The same night he was seen with Odin Lloyd and the two other people he was with. Like, it was obvious that he was going to get caught eventually. This is a guy who was literally who had a habit of doing wrong. The story of how he murdered these two people at a bar in a drive-by shooting was they literally spilled the drink on him, and he killed two people.
Right?
He's a loose cannon. I think this was bound to happen eventually.
Yeah, and we were looking at that in the pregame or the prep, excuse me. But you also have to take a look at. I remember you referenced something along the lines of, it's so crazy because he grew up in a good town, whatever. He lived a good life. He had a big house growing up.
No. That was the opposite. He was not a privilege, but he was well respected. His whole family he was from a family of really good athletes. He was a golden child in his town for sure.
Yeah. That's what. Well, basically the gist of what I'm trying to say here is it was unexpected for him to take this turn. It was definitely unexpected, but unfortunately, through personal experience and just other stories in the past, based on who you are, where you come from, people can always surprise. You never really know what someone's thinking or what they're going through. Everyone's got their own stuff going on, so it's not that wasn't that much of a surprise to me that ended up occurring. It's just crazy that I don't know. Maybe he seemed like a guy to me that obviously not content going to jail, but was a tough-minded person, maybe was going to try to get out and not really have much of a conscience, obviously, since he's killed people. And it was just weird to me that after 5 years, this is the 5 years is what it took for him to finally push himself over the edge.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know. I'm not going to try to put myself in the head of a person who's killed multiple people allegedly, but I don't know. I think all of it caught up with him. He's still appealing this Odin Lloyd verdict, and maybe he felt like this was the last straw, like this is the last hope. Get found not guilty, but he's found not guilty. He's still facing life in prison. Might not be 2 life sentences, but it's 1. Another thing that also is shocking is, again, he duped a lot of people. Robert Kraft says he felt duped by Aaron Hernandez. And the Pats committed $40 million to this guy. And when the Patriots, a 5-year contract, when Patriots give out these long-term deals, like, they're not buying into just the ability of the person, but the character as well. It's crazy how this guy, this kid at the time, kept up this facade and really duped all these people, and wasted everything he had. There's stories from when he was at Florida. There was an alleged shooting that he was a part of, and he was there, never went to trial or anything. But this guy's had a past of doing some shady things, but has always seemed to convince the right people that he's not a bad guy. When he was being drafted, he sent a letter to the Patriots saying, "If you draft me, I will do bi-weekly drug tests. And if I fail them, I will give up the remainder of my contract." I look at this guy, and I think part of it was the drug use. And he just got caught up in the fact that I'm in the NFL. Maybe he got caught up in the fact that, he's in the NFL. He felt invincible and he can get away with anything, because you don't just go murdering people, as carelessly as he did. 2 miles away from his home. Like, they knew he was with them. They knew he'd ask. He knew that the authorities would ask him questions. It's just the logic with this guy. I know you can't be right to murder someone, but it was as if he was trying to get caught. And that's really, out of everything, the carelessness is one of the more shocking aspects.
Yeah, and I was just so shocked that, like, his conscience was finally able to get to him at this point, like, based on.
Do you think that's his conscience, though? Do you think it's him feeling bad for murdering people?
I don't know.
Or do you think it's him feeling bad that, his daughter is going to grow up without a dad?
I'm just saying.
I
just think that it was surprising to me that the gravity of the situation hit him at the point where it did, because I thought that it would hit him much earlier, or maybe he thought that I don't know what it was, because this is, for what it looks like to me, when this double murder, this verdict coming out of him being not guilty, this shows that, okay, maybe he has a chance of parole here a little later down the line. So maybe this could be a shot of him getting out. Did he not want to get out? Did he not want to have to face the music of him being out of jail? Because he's been duping people his whole career, as you talk about. And then during the trial, with all this stuff that happens, then him being actually, like, sentenced to a life sentence in prison, and him being fine all the way now. And then finally, this is the one thing that pushes him over the edge. I mean, obviously, I don't even have a remote idea of what was going through his head while he was in jail. But it coming at this point was the most shocking part of everything.
It almost seems like it was planned, like a premeditated thing. Maybe he had this time frame after this court case concluded. Maybe he's like, you know what? When this is over, that's it for me. I'm not going to – it's hard to put yourself inside the mind of someone who would do that, and also, murder people. But maybe that's what it was. I don't know. It's just, Bill Belichick was interviewed on CNBC like a week or 2 ago, and he was asked about it. He was asked one word to describe Aaron Hernandez situation, and he said tragic, heartbreaking, tragic. And that, I think that sums it up. It's a guy who was, if he was still playing, you'd have to say he's probably a top 3 tight end in the NFL right now, maybe probably top 4 at least. And he has 2 Super Bowl rings, and he's doing well for himself. And said he stayed doing what he was doing when he was in college, and he got back into that pattern of being a criminal. And it's always a heartbreaking story whenever anyone goes down that road. But when you have so much to lose, and you have a $40 million contract and a fiance and a baby and a whole family that did not grow up in a privileged circumstance that's relying on you, and you pull something like that off, It's not tragic for the Aaron Hernandez story. It's really, I mean, it's tragic for the Hernandez family story. It's a really horrible thing. It's tragic for people who are from Bristol, Connecticut, who
Yeah.
watched this guy through high school and watched him go to Florida and dominate. The guy was dominating at the NFL level, and in the meantime, he was doing PCP and he was committing homicide semi-regularly. So no one could ever guess a story like this in just because of the unpredictability of something like this happening. I think this surpasses what OJ did. I think this is like, not that I was alive during that trial, but this is on a whole nother level. It's all bad, but this is just a completely different animal. And still, 4 years later, I'm shocked at how this went down.
And I want to shift gears here a little bit, because another tragic, obviously, event that happened in sports this week with Isaiah Thomas, and it's obviously someone's sibling passing away, is a completely tragic thing that I can't even fathom. But then when you look at also just what the guy's been through this whole year, being a 5'9" player in the NBA, I don't care if you average 40 a game, you're not going to get – it's very extremely hard for you to earn respect.
Yeah.
100%. And this is a guy who's obviously getting some criticism of it, because last year, what happened with the Celtics in the playoffs, the year before, what happened with them in the playoffs, obviously they lost to LeBron. But this guy just takes so much stuff. And, okay, this was his year to really prove that he's a top 10 player in the NBA. He averages like 30 a game in the regular season. Okay, cool. Great. Now let's see what happens in the playoffs, because being 5'9" in the playoffs, defense is more important in the playoffs than ever before. And when you're that, obviously your reliability on the court. So he wants to prove that he's a top player in the league. And this tragic event happens. And not only did it affect him, but it's affected his teammates. And you could tell they are getting bullied. And I mean bullied by a Chicago Bulls team on the glass. And this is a Bulls team that is top 5 most dysfunctional in the NBA, solely because of they're in this hybrid of either being a rebuilding team or they're being a team that's winning now. They're in the middle of that.
Yeah.
It's just getting bullied by that. You could just tell by their effort yesterday. Brad Stevens' team always show a lot of effort. They're always well-rounded. And when one player goes down, that's your best player, it brings down the rest of your teammates. And the Celtics, unfortunately, are they're just dealing with a lot right now with this. And you see because if this doesn't happen, I hate to say it, but if his sister doesn't pass away, they're up 2-0 right now.
You think? I don't know. I think, I mean, you have to give the Bulls credit.
I believe it's 1-1, because you look at the energy at the Garden yesterday when the game started. All right, maybe it won't be 2-0, but I think it would be a 1-1 series right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I look at this whole situation. It's really horrible what's happened. And, sometimes when this type of stuff happens, people rally around it. I don't think that's the case. And you can't judge someone based off of how they react to a thing like this. This is brutal. 22-year-old in a single car accident passes away right before Isaiah Thomas, a guy who's dealt with a lot of adversity in his career, being as small as he is, 60th pick in the NBA draft. He's dealt with a lot, and then this comes around, and this is probably the worst thing he's had to deal with, I'd say. And he hasn't played well. He hasn't played that great. Game 1, he did all right, but you look at yesterday's stat line. He scored 20 points, played 42 minutes, but was minus 20 when the Celtics were out there. And he's also 7 for 13 from the free throw line. This is a guy who shoots like 92% from the charity stripe, and he's 7 for 13 yesterday. Not that was the difference, but I think it speaks to how into this he is, and if this is something that is distracting him. But obviously, it's not just Isaiah Thomas, because the reality is the entire team has sucked. Al Horford has been getting bullied by Robin Lopez. Robin Lopez has been having his way with the Celtics team in the post. And obviously the rebound discrepancy wasn't as bad yesterday as it was in Game 1, but it's still a huge problem. They're getting bullied. You said it. And when, your top performer in the post is Kelly Olynyk, I think that tells you where your problems lie. This is a team that just is not tough down low, and it's showing here. obviously you have to give credit to a guy like Rajon Rondo, who's playing like playoff Rondo right now. And when he shows up, you have to watch out because he sets up his teammates and whichever team he is on plays better when he's playing well. Obviously he's the point guard. He's the general. And D Wade, he's hitting like step back threes. You can't predict this stuff happening. So, this is a combination of the Celtics simply not showing up, playing like crap, playing weak-minded and not playing tough at all. And it's also the Bulls playing really well. Something no one expected a team like the Bulls, which has had so much dysfunction between the rift with Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade versus pretty much the rest of the team, and Fred Hoiberg being questioned on his leadership ability as a coach, and just the dysfunction with the Bulls franchise in general. They come in and they're playing really good basketball on the road as the 8th seed. And they're on the verge to sweep this thing. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I don't know how the Celtics are going to respond because right now they're playing just weak. They're getting bullied by this team. They're not playing tough. If you're not playing tough in the playoffs, in the NBA playoffs, then you're not going to win much. You're not going to get through the first round. And again, the Celtics playoff woes under Brad Stevens' reign continues. As he's now 2-10 in his career. It's not fun to see, but it also shows you how far off the Celtics are in general.
The Bulls have as many playoff wins with Fred Hoiberg in the first 2 games than Brad Stevens has as a playoff coach. But here's the silver lining for me with the Celtics right now. Right? With everything going on in the playoffs, there's been a specific headline that I've seen. 1, obviously, because the Celtics are down 2-0, and 2, because the Cavs look horrendous. It culminates to the whole, why didn't the Celtics give up everything for Paul George or Jimmy Butler? And I still stand by that decision of them to not trade these assets. What's the point? 1, who could have predicted the Cavs to go on this downward spiral since the All-Star break? And 2, who could have predicted the Celtics to be down 2-0 to the Bulls here in the playoffs? At the end of the day, at the time of the trade deadline and right now, you know that this team's not going to make it to the finals. They'll be lucky to make it to the conference finals. So why are you trading away your future assets to do everything to win right now when you have 2 of the best NBA teams that I've seen since the 2000 Lakers? I don't understand it. So everyone's saying, oh, why didn't they trade for a superstar? What's the point? What's going to happen? Okay, great. Maybe, just maybe, you beat the Cavaliers, and that's predicting that they would go through this downward spiral, which no one was able to do. So maybe they beat the Cavaliers. And then what? You have Jimmy Butler with Thomas? Okay, great. Then you lose to the Warriors in the finals in 4 games. What's the point? What's the point of maybe making a 1-year push instead of waiting for guys to develop like James Young? Everyone's willing to give up James Young like that. The guy's 19 years old. What do you want? What do you want from him? To come into the league and average 25 a game his first year? Not everyone's LeBron. It takes time for young players to become men in the NBA and actually single-handedly help teams win games. This guy's still a prospect. What would you do if Andrew Benintendi on the Red Sox, his first year in AAA, hit 260? Would you cut him? Would you trade him? No. If these guys, I know baseball and basketball are a little different, but still, these guys are still prospects. I stand by the Celtics.
Well,
not giving up these assets at the trade deadline, keeping their picks, and waiting for the LeBron and the Warriors era to be done so they can go and approach the finals with full force and try to win multiple NBA championships.
I don't give a crap about James Young. They could have gotten rid of him. It's the picks that I care about. It's the picks, and it's Jaylen Brown specifically that I care about.
I meant, not James Young.
Yeah, he said James Young. I was like, what? Yeah, Jaylen Brown. No, you got to keep Jaylen Brown. James Young, they're not even picking him up for next year, so it's not like he's going to be the future. Yeah, okay. I know what you meant. Yeah, I mean, that goes back to my point. This tells you how far the Celtics are away from being an NBA Finals contender. It's clear that this roster just isn't very talented. And people who are bashing Brad Stevens, I know I brought up his playoff record, but that has nothing to do with Brad Stevens as a coach. He gets a lot out of this team in the regular season, and we all know the NBA regular season is kind of a joke. And if you argue against that, the Cavaliers are the 2 seed right now. It's because they don't care about the NBA regular season. My opinion.
Defense was just absolutely horrid.
Yeah, but it's not like if there's playoff time, they'd show up. You have to think. Um,
But you got to
we're
look.
getting off topic, but anyway, just to finish this point, um, I just think that the Celtics team not trading for Paul George or Jimmy Butler was absolutely the right move to make because one, those guys are going to be gone eventually. They're not re-signing with the Celtics. Two, uh, you have assets who will serve you better for more long term. I think coming with the Nets pick this year and next year, and Jaylen Brown, of course. This is, if anything, this tells you where to go from here with the Celtics because again, really far off from being that NBA Finals contender. Now you don't have to harp upon the fact that Isaiah Thomas is your future because he's not necessarily your future. He might not be a Celtic after next season. I don't know if Danny Ainge is going to want to give him a max deal. I don't know if I'd want to give him a max deal with the state the Celtics are in. Why not just start over? Because this was fun. The Celtics were a competitive team. You got guys like Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown, and you still have these assets, and you stay competitive. But it's clear that it's not working. It's clear that this isn't going to be enough. And then Brad Stevens and or Isaiah Thomas and Jaylen Brown overachieving and coming in and playing like they did was awesome and unexpected. But to think that that was going to be the core moving forward, given the fact that Isaiah Thomas can't play one side of the floor and realistically he's the only good offensive player for this team, it just wasn't going to happen. So this tells you where the Celtics are at. They get swept. All right, we got to just keep moving forward. They kept the Nets pick, and now we're glad we did that because this will serve us better than keeping Isaiah Thomas long term for sure.
And going back to your other point, what's going on with the Cavs right now? Their bench and everything around them is really, really bad. And you talked about it earlier. Like, look what the Cavs are doing in regular season, whatever. They weren't trying to be the number 2 seed by any stretch. They were like 20-23 in their last 46 games.
But you have LeBron James coming out and poo-pooing the regular season. Like he's openly talks crap about the regular season.
But I'm just saying, I don't think it's them. This spiral obviously being that they don't care about the regular season. They're going through a lot of trouble. And the fact that they're not – look, the Indiana Pacers are extremely overrated. I was watching their game the other night. No communication on transition defense. And personally, I just don't think that you're going to win a championship with Paul George as the best player on your team. We saw we saw the ceiling of his potential a few years ago when they had Roy Hibbert and George Hill and all that, and when Paul George was the best player, and their ceiling was Eastern Conference Finals. And that was it. Now he's the best player on the team. You've got no leaders in the locker room besides him. You don't have anyone that's a great competitor. I mean, Thad Young's a competitor. Miles Turner's young. Jeff Teague, we learned that he's a 15-point-per-game scorer. He's nothing more than average, especially in today's league of guards. And you've just got Al Jefferson. You don't really have any playmakers. So what I'm saying is the fact that the Cavs were only able to barely beat this team in the first few games, it was incredible to me. Game 1, the fact that it was even close is ridiculous. Game 2, the Cavs were abusing the Pacers just because they don't really have that great of leadership. Let me tell you this, man. Everyone's saying every big highlight, headline of, the Cavs are making the finals. The Cavs are going to walk to the finals. I still think they'll get there, but it's going to be much harder than people think. If they have to play against Giannis this next round,
yep.
Which that series, I think, between the Bucks and Raptors is all going to be based on how Toronto shoots. Because in Game 1, they were shooting like crap. In Game 2, they were actually shooting a respectable percentage, and that's why that game was close and the Raptors won. The next series for the Cavs, it's not going to be a cakewalk. And if they have to play the Wizards too, if the Cavs get to the finals, which I think they will again, the next 2 rounds, in my opinion, they're going 6 or 7 games, and they're really going to get tested. This Bucks team defends, and they will bully you. And Giannis is a matchup nightmare. So, and I've never been more certain of a team winning it all than the Warriors this year, and that's solely because of the Cavs' collapse and just how bad the East is. The East is probably as bad as it's ever been, in my years of watching basketball. And I also think the Celtics are the worst number 1 seed that I've ever seen too, but that's a different topic. But I don't think the Cavs are cakewalking to the finals. I don't.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to whether or not they find it within these next 2 rounds. They're going to make it to the NBA Finals. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion, especially with I'll call it the exposure of the Boston Celtics. But I think that they still have a chance to get in that rhythm and find what they had last NBA Finals. That can still happen. They're not going to lose a series to anyone in the Eastern Conference. It's evident. And so they have like 3 weeks or whatever it's going to be to figure it out.
But it's not as guaranteed, though, that they will make it as much as people think. You have to at least admit that. They're playing like crap. It's not as guaranteed that they're going to make it.
No, obviously not. And that's been my point. I think they're going to go to the finals, and I think you probably I'm on the same thought process as you. 5 games tops against the Warriors. The one point that I've been making the past few weeks is the Cavaliers, a LeBron James-led team, has not struggled like the Cavs have struggled this late in the season and then gone on to win an NBA Finals. And again, that goes back to them finding what they're missing right now and getting that magic that they had last season. Obviously, it's a different team and it's a big if, but it's definitely possible. You cannot dismiss that possibility that LeBron James starts going off, and you saw Kyrie played really well yesterday. If they get in the same rhythm and those guys are all playing 40 minutes a game, then they can surprise some people, maybe force it to 6 games. I don't think it's going to happen because I'm kind of under the same thought process as you. This team has not been playing well the past few weeks, and they haven't shown us that they're picking it up. Sure, they're beating the Pacers, but they're squeaking by these games. They should be beating the Pacers by double digits. That's how talented this roster is. And if they don't have that, then, they're screwed. Let me ask you this. What's the reason for their dysfunction?
Their defense. Everyone's deteriorating. It's getting so much worse. Richard Jefferson's getting older. They lost some guys. Obviously, Dellavedova and Mozgov weren't big game and playmakers, but just their defensive level has gone down tremendously. Their bench is a joke. I saw a lineup the other day playing extended minutes of Channing Frye and Kevin Love. What's that going to do inside? Is that going to be any paint protection? Absolutely not. You go against the Warriors, and they're just going to have a field day in the paint. Steph is going to be able to drive, kick, or drive, get to the hoop. KD's going to be able to drive, get to the hoop, Draymond, whatever. And then that'll open up the perimeter. They'll be able to make it a fast-paced game. And the Warriors will obviously end up creaming them. And with the Warriors, because we haven't really touched on the Western Conference, I just want to talk about the Clippers, because every year I've been just hoping that the Clippers end up playing the Warriors in the finals. This was more 2 years ago because of how they match up with them. Because when the Clippers lost to the Rockets in the second round, it was annoying because I knew that the Clippers would give the Warriors much more trouble than the Rockets did. And the Clippers obviously lost, and this year obviously tied 1-1 now with the Jazz, but they're not a good team. Like, look, Rudy Gobert, the fact that they lost game 1 and Rudy Gobert didn't play is a joke. Mm-hmm. And now, last night they won, and they scored all their points in the paint. But if they have to face a good – that's not going to happen. I just don't know what's next to this team. Chris Paul's a top point guard. Blake Griffin still has explosive athleticism.
How much of it comes down to Doc Rivers? Is he an overrated coach?
It's all that's where I was getting to. It's all Doc. You saw with Vinny Del Negro, this team was good. The second round was really the height of their potential. The Clippers management thought, wow, okay, we have such a good team, and we're only making it this far. It's got to be the coach. Let's get rid of him. Let's get Doc Rivers. Okay, Doc still hasn't gotten them past the second round. Maybe it's a coaching change. Maybe it's a change of culture. You got leaders on the team like Chris Paul. Chris Paul is one of the best leading point guards in the league. But at the same time, what's wrong with them? Because, maybe if Rudy Gobert's out the series, they should win in 6. But then what? I'm interested to see them play the Warriors and actually match up with them. But if they lose in devastating fashion, management's got to make a change. They've got to make
out if they early exit. Doc's out.
I think so, because Doc is okay. Maybe give him another year because he's talking about keeping this core together. He's their president of basketball operations as well.
Yeah.
So maybe keep that core together And then after next year, if it stinks again, then get him out. I'm all for the Clippers keeping it together. Why blow it up when you still got guys who still have multiple years of good basketball left and you don't have many picks?
Well, you have to. No one know. There are not many teams as talented as the Clippers in the NBA. But I think you hit the nail on the head. They're just not getting it done, and it sucks when they're playing this Jazz team. The Jazz aren't any slouch. They're a decent team, but no Rudy Gobert. There's no excuse not to beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think the Clippers, if they get one more player in free agency, look at them this year. You have Chris Paul, who's great, JJ Redick, who's an ideal 2 in today's NBA, just running off screens and knocking down threes with even just a second of space. DJ and Blake, which is a top front court. Austin Rivers, who had a great year this year off the bench. What else do they need? We'll learn a lot more about this team in the playoffs this year and who they get in free agency. Why not push for a title now? Because if you blow it all up and go into complete rebuild, it's going to take years. And I mean years.
Well, how many teams are the exception to this rule? As we were talking about 10 minutes ago, how many teams are the exception to waiting out the Cavaliers and the Warriors? The Spurs or the Clippers in that group? Is it those two teams, the Rockets? Like, how many teams are the exception to that? Because it seems like in the East, it's always going to be the Cavs, and in the West, as long as KD's there, it's always going to be the Warriors. Are there any exceptions to that rule of having to wait out these two teams?
I think the Wizards, if they fully max out Otto Porter this summer, and then maybe add someone else, because Gortat and they don't have that anymore. Gortat is getting a little older too. Maybe, but yeah, I think the Wizards. But other than that, you're right, man. It's a very top-heavy league, and other teams are just waiting. Look at the Sixers. Look at the Celtics. Look at everyone else. Obviously, the Sixers couldn't win now if they wanted, but I'm just saying it's a different element. And we're in this NBA where it's a superstars league now. No one's going for it by themselves. So yeah, I mean, there's not many exceptions to that rule, definitely, but. I mean, there's a few teams that could make it competitive. I'd say like 5 or 6 teams that could really make a push, make it competitive, but that's by far the least amount that I've ever seen. I used to watch Western Conferences where 50 wins got you in a 7 seed.
Before we switch topics, I want to ask you, what's the next move for the Celtics? Where should they go from here, in your opinion?
I think the Celtics should just keep doing what they're doing, man. I mean, obviously, with the roster that they have, unless someone offers a great trade that's going to help with your young guys, then do it. But other than that, just keep doing what they're doing. I mean, it's an unfortunate tragedy what happened with Isaiah Thomas. And obviously, if they lose to the Bulls in this first round, which it looks like they're going to do, it's fine. Don't put your head down. You know what you're doing. You knew that this team wasn't going to win a title. You knew that they weren't even, if they were lucky, they'd make it past the second round. Just keep doing what you're doing. Find out which guys are going to be here for the future. And the second that you know someone isn't, trade them away. And this draft, if they get Fultz, which I think would be a great fit in Boston, if they draft Fultz, that's going to tell you a lot about Isaiah Thomas's future as a Celtic.
Who says they can't play together?
They might be able to. Who knows? But if they both play
Washington guys, both went to the same school. I know that's appealing.
Isaiah Thomas will play the point, and they'll put Markelle Fultz off the ball, and then have Avery Bradley at the 3. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
As long as they don't get Lonzo.
Everything with the Celtics right now is an experiment. And that's what it is. That's what it has been. And they don't want to trade their assets to make a push now for a team that they know can't win it all. So they're going to wait it out, and I think that's smart. And in 2-3 years, I could see a Celtics-Sixers rivalry, or I could see a Celtics-Sixers-Wizards East when LeBron's gone.
Yeah, one thing you don't see a lot in really any sport is patience from GMs and presidents of basketball operation. Regardless of what you think of Danny Ainge, I think he's probably a top 3. I think he's probably very least top 5 executive in the NBA, in my opinion. I think he's very good at his job. Not the best drafter, but he's done some great things in his tenure. But I think regardless of your thoughts of him, you have to commend him for his patience, because it is proven that patience was the right thing to do. Him not making moves was the right move. The lack of trades is what they had to do, because they're too far off. It's clear that Paul George wouldn't have made the difference. Jimmy Butler wouldn't have made the difference, and he would have had to give up some top picks for that. So I think patience was key in this whole situation, and for that, I think Danny Ainge has done a very good job throughout this whole process.
Hey, man, what about I know we're going to get into football a little later, but with all this Celtics and Patriots, obviously tragedies. You got something, huh? Gillislee getting signed. Malcolm Butler is.
It's not official yet. The Bills can still match the offer sheet. So yeah, Gillislee. They got Burkhead a few weeks ago.
What if it's just a ploy for the Pats to want the Bills to use more of their cap room? What if this
just out of spite, just
the Pats saying, yeah, we want to offer Gillislee 1 year, $6 million. What if they just really think trash, but they want that? Then the Bills will think, oh wow, the Pats really want him. Okay, yeah. No. Let's use our cap on him.
Suckers. That'd be great. I mean, like we got him. Like they didn't even need him.
Dude, but honestly, at this point, the Pats could literally just sign, and they could sign Riley Cooper of the Eagles to a 3-year, $18 million deal. And
hello, oh, we're frozen.
They could sign his linebacker. People be like,
John, you there?
Yeah.
All right, you cut out there for a good.
So I was just saying, they could sign like Belichick. They could sign me as like linebacker or something, and Belichick would just be like
in the right spot,
and everyone would be like, "Wow, okay, I see his upside. Yeah, he's tall, lanky, and he's 185 pounds, but like, hey,
he's a white guy, you know. That's a
weapon.
They got Burkhead. Everyone's like, of course. But no, this Patriots team, they're making moves. Obviously, they also extended James White for 3 years, so they're running back core. What?
Kind of had to extend him at that point. I mean, come on, he scored like touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he set records, so you got to give him that courtesy extension. Yeah, but they also probably a couple other moves. Danny Amendola restructured his contract. 3rd straight year he's done that. That's a guy who just obviously loves to win. No other way around it. And then also Malcolm Butler signing his restricted free agent offer. And the talks are that the Saints are going to give back that 32nd pick, which the Pats traded to the Saints for Brandon Cooks in that deal. They're going to give that back for Malcolm Butler. So the Pats will get that 1st-round pick back. Something that I think is a possibility is they use that 1st-round pick to make a move on Richard Sherman in Seattle.
Come on. Can't they just end it? What do they want?
They do need another cornerback. They need a second guy. I don't think Eric Rowe's gonna cut it.
Hey.
So, in that horrible city. No, but I think for another cornerback of Malcolm Butler is not there. Hot take though. Hot take alert.
So it's literally end up being a Brandon Cooks for Malcolm Butler trade.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Jeez, man. All right. Well, I mean, the Pats are making moves. Before we sign off.
No. Listen up. I got a hot take before we sign off. If the Patriots keep Malcolm Butler and the roster stays as is, or if they bring in Richard Sherman, especially if they bring in Richard Sherman, I think this Patriots team has as good of a chance at going undefeated as they did in 2007 with the roster they're putting forward and with the landscape in the AFC and the NFL. I think this Patriots team is going to be one of the best Patriots teams that we've seen in the Brady Belichick era. I think that's honestly the probable outcome with the roster they have. That's how good this team is this season.
Yeah, I mean, man, you know I can't rule out anything for them at this point.
But would you say this is one of the more talented Patriots rosters you've seen?
Yes. I think the most talented one I saw was the Seahawks Super Bowl win. I would say that was the most well-rounded. But I mean, Stephon Gilmore and Richard Sherman is as good as Brandon Browner and Darrelle Revis, especially when you also have Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung and Jaron Harmon as your safeties over top. I think this will be a better defense than or at least a better secondary if they bring in Richard Sherman or if they even keep Malcolm Butler. I think this is a really, really good team. I'm so pumped to watch them. Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I'm interested to see it too. The draft's next week. We'll have a show before the draft. We're signing off here. You can find me on Twitter at J_Sokoloff, SOKOLOFF.
That's not a V.
It's not. Stop it.
And I'm at Alex_Lebowitz, capital A and capital L in Lebowitz, LEB as in boy, OWITZ. Also, I have a website. I think I might actually put it on my social media today. Alex Lebowitz, same spelling, .com, no underscore. So
sure
Alex, it's not Leibowitz, no. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, is it not Sokolov?
Okay. All right.
We can play this game. We both have very Jewish last names. Yours probably more so. But yeah, so check out my website. I'll put all my stuff. This podcast will also be on that website. There'll be a blog section. Keep everything updated. It'll be a fun old time. So check it out, alexlebowitz.com.
All right, guys. We'll be back next week. Catch us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher. No matter how you're listening, we'll be there. So we'll see you next week.